Joining me this morning is Bakersfield Police Chief Greg Terry to talk about several issues in Kern County and in Bakersfield. Chief Terry, thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Let's just talk about that report. And your office said, your department said that you have seen trends in Bakersfield where there are quote unquote bad drivers that this report kind of outlines. Talk about the situation. Are we seeing more bad drivers and just unsafe driving behaviors?
Well, it's hard to describe a bad driver, I think, specifically, but there's no question that our motorcycle officers, our traffic officers, certainly are seeing trends of speeding, distracted driving, cell phones, talking to others that are in the vehicle, just not paying attention, making unsafe turns, unsafe lane changes. A whole host of those things we continue to see.
What are the biggest issues that your officers are seeing when they're pulling people over right now?
For the violations,
you mean? For the violations,
speeding.
Yeah, speeding.
Yeah.
And are there certain parts of town or certain roads in Bakersfield where speeding kind of where it is more of an issue than others?
For sure. Roads that are long, that are wide, that enable this kind of speeds, I mean, they certainly attract that kind of traffic patterns, and so that is where we see it most common.
Pedestrian fatalities also is an issue that we have been talking about for several years, and there's been so much talk about what is being done to reduce pedestrian fatalities, and yet we still see the number go. I mean, it's still high. I mean, it is still high from where of course we'd like it to be zero, but it's still something that we see on a regular basis. What does the issue look like right now? And when you look at the trends, how does it compare today or last year compared to a couple of years ago?
Well, we saw a record high, I think, in 2022 with over 30 pedestrian fatalities. In 2023, last year, we actually saw nearly a 50% reduction in that to about 17 or 18. And so it's certainly a drastic improvement. But when we think about these things, these are the loss of lives and lives of family members of our community. And so it is something that we need to continue to focus on. But the trend is definitely going back to what probably we always reflect back to COVID or 2020.
Right.
So when you go back to those kinds of that time, we're starting to see the trend for pedestrian fatalities kind of go back into that range.
When I'm out and talking to friends and family, I feel like every once in a while the conversation comes up where, you as a driver are driving down the road and you see someone crossing the street, quickly making an unsafe decision on going out into a busy street where the lights aren't bright, it might be dark, it might be, there's all of these instances or these close calls, if you will, like I feel like a lot of people have experienced.
Yeah.
What is the legality of, let's have a situation here where a driver is driving, paying attention, going down the road, and a pedestrian walks right in front of the car and you hit them? What happens to that driver, even though they have been paying attention, they've been abiding by the law, but the pedestrian has the right of way, and with California's new law that makes jaywalking no longer an offense within reason, what happens in a situation like that?
All right, there's a lot in that question, but let's start with the reality of, you can be doing everything right and still find yourself in that kind of a situation. And in fact, that exact scenario has played out too many times across our community. But the reality is, if you are obeying the speed, you're driving within the appropriate things that you're supposed to be doing, and a pedestrian steps out into the roadway and causes a collision, civilly, legally, you may be in the clear. But if that person is killed, the trauma that is created from that kind of a scenario, you live with for the rest of your life. And so even though there may not be a legal responsibility, you're dealing with the trauma of that kind of a circumstance. And unfortunately, that has happened all too often. When we talk about the pedestrian laws, and when you look at the pedestrian fatalities here locally, the vast majority of the time, they occur because a pedestrian is in the roadway where they're not supposed to be, outside of a crosswalk, just crossing in the middle of the road. The laws have changed and allow some of those crossings, but when it's safe to do so. And the pedestrian still has the responsibility to do that. But if you notice in the last couple of weeks or last couple of months, we've been inserting a little bit more information into our news releases talking about the roadway conditions, because the way to address pedestrian fatality is certainly through enforcement and a police presence and those kinds of things, raising the awareness of drivers that these incidents are occurring in these areas, but also looking at roadway design, looking at lighting. There's a lot of things environmentally, I think, that we can do around the roadways to help make them safer for a pedestrian and for a driver who is doing everything they're supposed to do to never find themselves in that kind of situation.
Who are these pedestrians that are getting hit? Is there a trend?
Well, the vast majority of them we are seeing are homeless or suffering from some addiction or mental illness. That is the vast majority of them that we're seeing, because they are appearing in the roadway at night and in different ways, laying in the roadway, and just really bizarre behavior at times. And that is certainly predominantly what we are seeing.
All right, Police Chief Greg Terry, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Do appreciate it.